change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will change the world, and that's our job.
Tell me why. Why can't we live together? Tell me why. Why can't we live together? Everybody wants to live together. Why can't we live together?
Hello, all you melanated beauties, sun-kissed by God's lips. This is Coy with your black tea sip. I'm sipping power to pour you the truth. Go grab your cup. Let's fill it up.
And today, I'm back at Fishbowl Radio Network on a Friday, and I can say it is almost a happy Friday for me. Almost, because the children are almost out of school. And so the early morning taxi service will expire for temporarily long enough for me to catch my breath and get a decent night's sleep. This is Coy with the Black Tea Sip. We got a lot to talk about today. We are going to talk about the GOP. We're going to talk about how it's been trumped. We're going to talk about this new idea that Texas lawmakers have come up with. And I think you'll be happy to know that while they are Jim Crow 2.0, they never cease to amaze me with the tomfoolery and the oxymoronic language. And yet, with all of that, we tend to rise. Today, the House Bill 292 was in fact passed by the House, and the Botham-Jean bill was passed. I'm super excited to hear that. And of course, it will go to the Senate, and then we'll see if Governor Hot Wheels is going to sign it. But we are still making progress in the midst of adversity. Who would ever thunk it? Who would ever think that they continue to bury us, thinking that they can suffocate the life out of us? They don't know we're seeds. We keep growing. And so today I want to say shout out to all the activists, Next Generation Action Network, and so many others. Jane Hamilton, for always being a light shining in the darkness of the Republican Party. Not all Republicans, just the corrupt ones. Well, yeah, you're right. That's almost all. There's a lot going on in Texas. We've got so much oxymoronic language going on. We're going to talk about that today. Y'all have forced me to talk about this Real Housewives of Atlanta bull pookie. And so we'll talk about that a little bit, but I'm not going to spend much time on it because she almost got me. But she got y'all. She definitely got y'all. And so I want to make sure that we all understand that don't let them get you out of getting as good. And we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about Chick-fil-A. Can y'all believe it? Chick-fil-A is out here wilding. And so there's a lot that this Christian company, they're not just targeting LGBTQ, not just LGBTQ plus. I understand I'm supposed to say plus now. They're also targeting folks that look like us. We're going to talk about all that and more. This is called the Black Tea Sip. Stay with me. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. I want to introduce you to Jane Hamilton. So this is near and dear to my heart. She is a tremendous activist, and she's the kind of activist that buries her head deep in the paperwork to get real legislation done. I consider her a friend, and I consider that an honor and a privilege to call her my friend. We'll be right back. This is Coy with the Black Tea Sip.
For nearly 30 years, we've had the experienced leadership of Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson. Now, it's our duty to ensure that we continue toward progress. I am Jane Hope Hamilton. As a wife, a mother, and for a time a single mother, I know firsthand the challenges that our families face, and I know what it takes to get things done for our families and our community. As the state director for President Biden and former chief of staff on Capitol Hill, I fought for our community to have affordable health care, good paying jobs, and quality education. For years, I have also gone toe-to-toe with those who try to push us back and knock us down. When corrupt Republicans pass discriminatory voting laws that violate our rights, I fought back, went to court, and won. And when an out-of-control cop beat me to the ground, I refused to be intimidated. I stood up for myself, and the charges were dropped because I demanded justice. In this climate, as we face so much uncertainty, I am being encouraged to run in Congressional District 30. And as I consider it, I'd like to hear from you. Together, we can move our communities and our families forward.
Turn around, put your hands behind your back, now! Now!
Okay, it's fine. It's behind my back, sir. I have not done anything.
This is Officer Paul Abel.
I have not done anything. She has you on camera right here.
I don't care! You didn't listen. I told you to go away.
I didn't do it.
You didn't want to listen.
You told me to go away for what reason?
Dude, I don't have to sit here and
Did I commit a crime?
Did I tell you to give me your ID?
Ma'am, I'm on camera. Did I commit a crime?
Of the Pittsburgh Police Department.
Is he under arrest, sir?
Am I under arrest? Sir, am I under arrest? Sir, am I under arrest?
Hey.
Why is he under arrest?
Dude, can you please tell me?
I know this kid since he was 3 years old.
I don't care.
Okay?
Can you please tell me what I'm under
No,
arrest
would
for?
you sit down?
Okay.
Get down on the ground.
Can you please tell me what I'm under arrest for, sir?
Failure to disperse.
Dispersed for what reason?
Failure to disperse.
And he's big mad at a bystander.
This is Officer Abel. I don't have a badge number, but
3806. Abel, please walk away.
3806.
Give me
No,
space.
please keep
I don't wanna
recording.
walk away.
Please keep recording.
Sure.
Walk
You
back.
got it.
We know his sister, his
I don't
father.
care.
He's a member of his community who works at the JCC.
Because the man in cuffs said his thin blue line flag was disrespectful to the American flag.
This is out of
He
hand.
decided to be disrespectful to me.
He's allowed to do
That's,
that.
yeah, he's allowed,
It doesn't
buddy.
matter.
Yeah.
No.
You're being absolutely out of hand.
I'm not allowed to tell you
You're
what he
not allowed to
did.
detain
You
him
want
for
to know
being
what he did?
disrespectful.
Then walk away. If you don't want to know what he did, then walk away.
I want to know what he did. What did he do?
Are you going to interrupt me again?
Here's what you said he did.
I told
He
him to
said-
walk away. He kept blocking the entrance. I said it 3 times.
Okay.
Wouldn't move.
Is it a public thoroughfare? Is it private property?
Right now it is, yes.
So Officer Abel brutalizes this man with a taser, screams at him, and then won't use reason.
You don't have probable cause to go through that bag. That is illegal, sir. It is on camera, and that is illegal.
You right now, there's no reason you should be checking my bag.
And even conducts a search of the bystander's bag, which others tell the officer is illegal. When black people speak of the horrors minorities face in this country, white America does not care to listen.
There's a lot of things that need to change. One specifically is police brutality.
When Colin Kaepernick tried to speak, he was muted, silenced, and canceled. Yes, canceled by NFL owners for saying racism is bad and police brutality is a threat. In Pittsburgh, like in the country, it's the same stuff, different day. Officer Abel arrested a man at the Squirrel Hull Farmers Market because his mask, the thin blue line flag, is hateful imagery that officers love touting. Abel wore it. The thin blue line flag and hashtag represents the Blue Lives Matter movement. It is a rallying cry to mock Black Lives Matter. In Charlottesville, the alt-right propelled this flag. So on a public sidewalk, Abel told the man to leave the area. The man who was going to the market asked what he did wrong and why he had to leave. Abel took him into custody, even pulling his taser on the young man, who continued to ask what he had done wrong. Bystanders continued to ask, what did he do wrong? Abel told the crowd, he came up and decided to be disrespectful to me. Many in the crowd pointed out that being disrespectful was not a crime. Now for Abel. What is his history? More reporting from Pittsburgh Current. Abel pursued a man who he thought struck him in a bar. Abel chased the man, pistol whipped him, and shot him in the hand. Turns out it was the wrong guy. Abel was acquitted after a judge essentially ruled that a cop, even one who had been drinking, is never off duty. However, the city paid close to $45,000 in a civil settlement. Abel got his job back. In 2008, Abel's wife testified at a custody hearing centering
barbaric, stifling, prohibited laws about people's uteruses because they secretly want one? Has that ever been a thought to y'all? Okay, I'm just saying. So here we are with a law again about women's productive rights. In the state of Texas, there is a law that suggests that if a woman wants an abortion, she has to go to the doctor and get said abortion before a heartbeat is detected. Well, now, that's usually before 6 weeks. So you typically don't know that you are pregnant until you have a missed cycle. So you basically have roughly 2 weeks to just make a decision about what you want to do with your body and get into the doctor and get the procedure scheduled and get the procedure done in order to be able to stay within the confines of the law of Texas that these white men continue to force upon people. I am not pro-abortion. I'm not anti-abortion. I'm pro-right. I am pro you have a right to live your life the way you want to. And I don't understand why we keep rehashing this. It's, we continue to go round and round with this subject. We continue to have these battles, and it continues to go up to the courts, and then it makes a visit over a period of years to the Supreme Court. It gets shot down again, but they stay in your uterus. I just don't understand it. So it's Senate Bill 8, and it's a Republican priority measure, and it's it's the heartbeat bill, and it's passed in other states. And but it's been stopped, in the courts before it can, but it does damage. So the idea that, they'll just stop it again. But, it does damage because it shuts off for a period of time before the court can make a ruling, people's ability to make decisions about their rights. I mean, and what it does is it limits significantly a person's ability to be able to say, this is, what I need. And the thing that I think is most telling is that this idea that you must do it within this period of time. But I also think that it's critical for you to understand that when they come up with these laws, they're doing a couple of different things. It's not just trying to regulate it, but they're also talking about quality of life, because they force this upon you, and then they tell you can't have welfare. You're a welfare mom. We've got a whole thing right now in the United States government where certain states are, and I'm sure Texas is going to start beating its drum just momentarily, are saying that they don't want to take the additional $300 a month that Congress approved for coronavirus and unemployment insurance benefits. So you get whatever your amount is, and then they put another $300 on top of that so that people can try to make ends meet. The idea within the Republican Party, that's why I say they've been trumped and duped. The idea of the Republican Party is it's keeping people from actively seeking jobs. And so they give this number, and they say, well, I believe it's the state of Montana, they've got 40,000 vacant jobs. Well, that's not since Corona. That is, they've always had a large number of jobs because they have high-end jobs that people have not been trained to do. That's all over the United States of America. So they always take these numbers and they skew them, they twist them and they turn them, and they use them to their benefit because Democrats don't tell good stories. And let's be fair, the Republican Party is very, very good. They are excellent at weaving a tale. Right now in Arizona, since we're talking about being trumped and duped, right now in the state of Arizona, they are recounting, and they are recounting because they believe that there is voter fraud, and they are trying to prove it. They are trying to prove that there's voter fraud in Arizona. Now, with the complete and total understanding that this will not change the results, nor are they still yelling that Biden is not the true, actual, legitimate candidate. They are simply saying that there are bamboo fibers on the papers, and so those ballots were flown in from Asia. I'm going to give you a moment to say that out loud to yourself. Yeah, still doesn't make sense. So that's one of them. That's a QAnon theory, because the Republican Party has decided that they are no longer going to use reason. They're no longer going to be a party that tries to make sense. They're only going to be a party of foolishness and literally lunacy, because this is where we are. So it doesn't matter if it is a national foolishness campaign of lunacy and innuendo and gossip and play. It doesn't matter. Or it could also be very much, in your state, because we also, in the state of Texas, I know you said, why are you talking about Texas so much? Because you will not believe the ridiculousness that is going on in the state of Texas. And I feel compelled, I tell you, to bring it to light. Because these are the things that make me say, are you kidding me? So here we are, state of Texas. We are also out here wilding, and I'm using the word wilding. We out here wilding, saying that they also don't want teachers. Yes, we have gone from, get the babies here to don't educate the babies. Don't tell the babies the truth. Just get them here. When you get them here, don't necessarily equip the parents to be able to take care of them. Don't provide good paying jobs for the parents. Don't make sure that these parents, many of which are pregnant, because, people had nothing to do during the coronavirus. So, you got babies being born. Don't give them any kind of welfare, because they're not going to want to get off of it, because those little measly welfare checks, very few people get a whole lot of money in food stamps. They really don't. And let's be clear, welfare did not start because of black and brown people. Welfare started because of white people, because if that's just the truth. I mean, if you look at the Appalachian Mountains, it's like South Dallas. They're just white. So we don't need to have this spin that it's us or Hispanic people or, the minorities, the downtrodden, the scourge of the earth, Republican Party, the party of Abe Lincoln. They have this theory that, no, we're not going to support you. We just want the babies here. We don't want abortion rights for women. And when you get here, we're not going to do anything to support, your well-being and your welfare. We're not going to enable parents to be better parents and be able to provide. No, we just want to make sure the babies get here. So now, in the state of Texas, while they are restricting your right to have an abortion, even in circumstances where the mother's life may be in jeopardy, they are even saying that they don't want that to also be the case. And I think that's very important, that I need to bring that up as well. I think it's also very important for you to know that the Texas Republican lawmakers are not wanting your children to be taught what they consider woke philosophies. This came out of someone's mouth. It's a two-piece legislation in Senate Bill 2022 and House Bill 3979. They have doubled down, and they are working with each other in Texas House and the Texas Senate to make sure that teachers do not have to teach anti-racist material and from receiving private funding or material for teachers to teach this controversial 1619 project. Okay, so I think it's important for us to talk about what the 1619 project is, okay? And it started out, they released it on Twitter. So you have an opportunity. You go to Black Twitter, though. You can't just go to regular Twitter. You got to have the passcode and the key, and then you show your member card, your Black Melanated Nation card. Okay, so once you do that, then you can get into Black Twitter, and then you will be able to get to the 1619 Project. But I think it's important for you to know that the 1619 Project basically breaks down racism in this country and how racism has affected Black people and how it has affected the white supremacists and the wage gap, the wealth gap, the earning gap, the gap in living standards. And so it was produced by the New York Times, and the writer, who is a Black woman, goes on to talk about how in 1619, August of that year, a ship appeared on the horizon near Point Comfort, a coastal port in the English colony of Virginia, and it carried more than 20 enslaved. I've had a bit of awakening myself and enlightening, and I don't want to use the word slave anymore. I think we need to say they were enslaved because, African history did not start with the enslavement of the people. There were centuries of people thriving and living and effectuating civilization that was then carried to the other parts of the world. The cradle of civilization is in Africa, and so we need to be acknowledging that even in our sentimentality, but certainly through our words. And they were enslaved Africans who were sold to the colonists. And so the project goes on to detail what all of that entailed and what it looked like and what it is. And several essays, essay from Matthew Desmond. And so all of these things help to effectuate and scope and frame people's understanding of the origin of slavery and then how it effectuates life now. So that you cannot do that in the state of Texas. A teacher cannot have that conversation. So when you get to that part in history, and I don't know what they're going to do with Abraham Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation of January 1963. 1863. Oh Lord, sometimes it feels like 1963. I don't know what they're going to do with that part. Now we do know that the Texas history textbooks have in fact come out with information saying that slaves migrated here for work. The Africans migrated to the United States looking for work, and that they were happy working in the plantation. Well, the only reason they would be happy working in the plantation is because there was a doctor that set out for his life's work to talk about how Africans and then later African Americans, Black Americans as a whole, their lungs were of a more diminished or deficient capacity, and so it was medically beneficial for them to work in the fields because the hard, tenuous, back-breaking work helped to strengthen their lungs. That is why we have so many myths about who Black people are today in the medical community. They did a study, I believe it was Columbia University, that said 1 out of every 5 myths about African Americans are actually believed by medical students. I'll give you an example of what that looks like. That our skin is thicker. We don't have the same skin as our Caucasian counterparts. That we have less nerve endings, and so we feel pain less. Those are 2 of the 5 myths and that kind of thing is believed. We don't know our own bodies has always been one. And so when they're talking to us, they are kind of dismissive and kind of disavow what you're saying, especially to an extent because they've been taught that you don't have the mentality to understand your own body. So when you say you're in pain and you say the pain is a 10, they're probably going to write down a 5 or a 6. And I've talked about that before. All of this helps to frame not just grade school in Texas, but graduates, a school after you graduate, so undergraduate thinking, graduate thinking, and of course, when we start to talk about legal ramifications for thinking like this, should someone become a lawyer? Certainly health ramifications, should someone become a doctor? So the idea that you cannot teach this quote-unquote theory in school because it's, well, you know, it's uncomfortable, and that they don't need to be uncomfortable. So the GOP passes a bill to stop teachers from talking about racism. And it's a great article by Jennifer Bendery where she really breaks it down. But I want you to understand that this new philosophy about how to stop people from talking about it is now being legislated. And they're not supposed to talk about white supremacy because that doesn't exist. You do understand that. The white supremacy doesn't exist. It's made up in our heads. And so if you are a teacher in a public school, you do not have to talk about it. And there are ramifications for those curriculums and administrators that make that a part of the curriculum. The bill is fast-tracked by Governor Hot Wheels. Can't you see him rolling real fast? I wish he'd roll away. To sign the law, and it states that social studies and civics teachers aren't allowed to discuss the concept that one race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex. Now, you know, they just threw the sex part in there so that people couldn't say, you know, well, anything you can do, I can do better. You know, we can't, not only can we not say that men are better, but women cannot be better at something. You know, we can't have the conversation like we're having now in Dallas, where the Hockaday girls lacrosse team won the state championship and the Jesuit boys lacrosse team won the championship. The girls played in a subpar field surrounded by apartments. I was like, that's a weird place to have a championship game. And it was little grass. It was very dirty. Whereas the boys' field was, you know, immaculate. No, you can't have those kinds of conversations. Because, see, when they say you can't say one is better than other, what they're really saying is you can't make comparisons. Because in order to make comparisons, you have to state why the comparison is being made. So there's a philosophy or a theory that one is superior, but this is why that's not true. So you're going to be walking a very fine line. And it says that civics teachers may not be compelled to discuss current events or widely debated and currently controversial issues of public policy or social affairs as a part of their course. In civics, the bill passed 79 to 65. Really, you know, it's not surprising it was party lines. This is ridiculous. And this is what we're dealing with. This is Coy with the Black Tea Sip. We're going to take a quick break. I'll be right back. Stay with me. Go grab your cup. We got a lot to talk about. Filling it up?
For nearly 30 years, we've had the experienced leadership of Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson. Now, it's our duty to ensure that we continue toward progress. I am Jane Hope Hamilton. As a wife, a mother, and for a time a single mother, I know firsthand the challenges that our families face, and I know what it takes to get things done for our families and our community. As the state director for President Biden and former chief of staff on Capitol Hill, I fought for our community to have affordable health care, good paying jobs, and quality education. For years, I have also gone toe-to-toe with those who try to push us back and knock us down. When corrupt Republicans pass discriminatory voting laws that violate our rights, I fought back, went to court, and won. And when an out-of-control cop beat me to the ground, I refused to be intimidated. I stood up for myself, and the charges were dropped because I demanded justice. In this climate, as we face so much uncertainty, I am being encouraged to run in Congressional District 30. And as I consider it, I'd like to hear from you. Together, we can move our communities and our families forward.
Joining us, we've been talking about the stupidity of Texas Republican lawmakers and the oxymoronic way that they think. If you are a friend of this show, you know that I often say that if it doesn't make sense, it's usually a racist lurking about. Right before the break, we were talking about how teachers cannot teach current events, things that are designated controversial. And let me tell you why that's a problem. Because the term controversial is it's a subjective term. So how are we making determinations as to what is controversial? Like, how do you make that determination to tell a teacher, well, no, this subject matter we're going to stay away from because it may make some people uncomfortable, and this we're going to talk about? So is it based on the population of the school through its demographics? Is it based on your PTA president? Like, what is the metric or the litmus test that is used to determine what it can and cannot be discussed? Because here's the thing. If you're at a school in, South Dallas or in Baltimore, Maryland, or if you are at a school in 3rd Ward, Houston, you can have a conversation that's not necessarily controversial, because we could talk about George Floyd. That would be predominantly, if not all, Black or Hispanic classrooms that would be more motivated to have the same thinking about what happened with George Floyd and to celebrate Derek Chauvin's conviction with zealousness and glee. So the topic may be controversial to someone else, but it's certainly not controversial to that group of people. So how are we making that determination? And I believe that what is called critical race theory is going to be a checks and balances of what white men have designated as you can and cannot do. But then here's the other problem. All it's going to take is for one person to start making noise. That one person who doesn't like it, that one person who, because I mean, look, we used to pray in public school, and then it was a small group of people, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in Texas, it was like one parent in a school that didn't want their child to pray, and now that it was a movement where it sparked where some fragments of parents here and there throughout the nation were able to get together, and that very small faction of people pushed prayer out of schools, and look where we are now. So with that being said, what is it going to take for one person to get upset and decide that what a teacher talked about was controversial? So that means we stay away from all current events. So then what are these kids going to learn? Because the Republican Party operates in completely oxymoronic language. They want the children here, but they want them to be dumb as a rock. They don't want them to know anything. They don't want them to study current events. They don't want them to know what's happening in the world. They don't want to invoke critical thinking. So they decide they're going to keep all their people dumb. That's a problem. Have you asked yourself, why would they not want children to learn and to think and to be able to get along? Because in order to understand someone, you have to also understand, how the world is framed around them. And you cannot be dismissive of that. One of the things that I've been saying a lot lately is we have all of these shows. I was watching Enslaved, which is Samuel L. Jackson's show on Epix. And I've watched some other shows, and it's at the point where I'm saying, well, why am I watching this? I'm living so much of it, and I'm fully aware of my history. So why am I watching this? Honestly. And I'm asking myself these, pointed and poignant questions, because to what end? I mean, the people whose hearts and minds we really need to change, are they watching the show? Are we just educating ourselves so that when they're not teaching critical race theory in the schools, we can have the conversations with our children? But is it our children that we need to be having these conversations with? Or is it our counterparts that need to be having the conversations with their children and around their water coolers, on their jobs, or in their cars, and with their neighbors, on their radio shows and TV shows that reflect their way of life and not necessarily ours? Whom are these shows for? And exactly whom are the legislation? Critical race theory, don't teach it in school. Who is it for? Is it the protection of white fragility? Or is it to ensure that we continue to bump heads with our white counterparts because we are working against things like actually acknowledging slavery and contrasting it with slaves came here? I think I'm saying African immigrants came here looking for work. That suggests immigration as a choice, when not so much. There was no choice. I think the only choice that we could say that actually took place during slavery would have been the choice to join Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. Like, that was a choice, and a deadly one at that. Quite dangerous. But I think that's really the only choice. You had to ask to be married. You had to beg to keep your child because it was chattel. So I'm not sure, what's the choice? You certainly didn't get a choice in jobs. And if you were allowed off the plantation for weekend work where you could earn your own money, oftentimes it was taxed or tariffed. So you didn't get to keep it. So I'm not sure how this thing about immigration, suggestive of choice, actually comes into play. And now we cannot have the conversation because the conversation is uncomfortable. Oh, no, certainly not that. Because if you start to educate people about the atrocities that were committed and America's original sin, then what you also start to do is empower people. And you can't have that. I'm talking about empowerment with the understanding that you are not a product of enslavement, but a product of the people who were able to make it to this country. Because only 4%, one less than 5, one more than 3, 4% of Africans made it from Africa through the Middle Passages to the United States of America. 4%. 46% are in Brazil. 46%. Because it's easier to come from Africa and go through the Caribbean. But that long ocean trek to America is suggestive that you are miraculously strong and that you really do embody this thing, this it factor that makes you, well, dare I say, superior. And if you start to understand that, know that, and believe that, then how can they control you? And if people start to own their ancestors' wrongdoing, then the playing field starts to become a little more even, and perhaps a little easier, because then the acknowledgement of the wrongdoing means that there must be an action of right to right the wrong. So what do? They invent Jim Crow 2.0. They start to have legislation where you cannot learn in school. Yes, that's what that's about. You cannot learn in school because you know why? Because if you start to learn in school and you start to look at mathematical, like, what is the name? Boland's algebra, that is an African mathematical system that the Africans saw that occurs in the environment. It's these repeating patterns that grow off of one another like an icicle. I mean, there is a building in Africa, in Gabani. Okay, don't quote me as to the actual place. I'll get it for you. The entire building is built like that, one with these very unique squares and rectangles cut into it that alleviates the need for air conditioning because air continuously flows through that building. So if we really start to talk about who we are what we come from, and we start to have real conversations about Africa and people of the African diaspora, and people start to acknowledge what was in Africa before enslavement, oh, baby, then we got us something to do, don't we? So they start to enact legislation to stop it, because what is happening in this country is a movement that I believe cannot be stopped, but they gonna give it the old college try. What is happening in this country is we are starting to turn the tide, because remember about 5 years ago, the black students at Duke University did a study of how Duke University benefited from slavery, and it was something like $200 million, and their endowment, was over $1 billion, and they said reparations. And that is happening all over the United States. And what we see happening is this slipping of white supremacy. But here's the other problem. If it happens for black people, then will it happen for Mexicans? Will we revisit the atrocities of the Native American? Right now in the Texas House, they are being monitored very heavily by, and I hope I don't butcher this, I believe it's the Kickapoo tribe, Native American tribe, and they are wanting to have the same kind of casinos that you see in Oklahoma. But even though there's federal legislation that says that Native Americans can have this on their lands, on their sovereign lands, and they benefit from it, the tribes benefit from it, and they don't have to pay the United States government. Even though that federal legislation exists, you can only do what your state allows you to do. Texas will not allow casino gambling, even though they say that it's okay to have lottery gambling, but they're concerned about the moral impact and addiction and all of these other oxymoronic terms, because you have lottery. You have the lottery. I mean, people are addicted to the lottery. So I don't see, what are you saying? Casino gambling would make it worse? But they don't have lottery at all. Don't have gambling at all. I mean, because you can buy a scratch off as long as the state gets its money, but you cannot bet on the Cowboys. See? It's oxymoronic. And that, I told y'all, if it doesn't make sense, it is a racist lurking about. They're lurking all over the Texas Senate. Y'all see me playing Jane Hamilton's video because she's running for Congress, the 30th district. We need to send people like Jane to Congress. Congress needs some help. They need some people that are unafraid, unabashed, and not afraid to get their hands dirty. Because what is going on right now with Texas is that they're trying it out. They're running up the flagpole to see how it blows in the wind. They're throwing it up against the wall to see how it sticks. That is what's going on now. And so whatever sticks, I'm telling you, it'll be picked up by other states, other southern states, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama. You'll find it in Wyoming and Montana. You'll find it in Kansas. You'll find it in Florida, Oklahoma. See what happens? Once Texas and Governor Hot Wheels get to rolling, then you'll see it roll over to other places. And Jim Crow 2.0 is still walking and breathing. And I think we need to unplug all of the oxygen tanks and make sure it dies. This is Corey with the Black Tea Sip. I got to pay some bills. I'll be right back. Let's talk about some other things that are going on in the world. Liz Cheney's out. This Elise Stefanik is in, and y'all still worried about Porsha and the Real Housewives. Go grab your cup. I ain't done. We filling it up.
Hi, Amy Manuel here, proud Texas liberal and host of Political Musings every Monday at noon on Fishbowl Radio. Each week, we explore politics through the lens of music and pop culture on themes that vary from science fiction to wages to civil rights to women's rights, and sometimes just one artist like Elvis or Eartha Kitt. We'll meet activists and candidates and some folks that lived the history that some of us only read about. Join in each Monday at noon
on FishbowlRadioNetwork.com. Jump in. Wanting to host your own podcast or radio show, but don't know where to start? Have you been told you have the gift of gab or a lot to say, but don't know what to do with it? Don't answer that. It's simple. Fishbowl Radio Network, home to your favorite online radio shows. So contact us today and become the next big name in the industry. With a number of services to help grow your audience and expand your brand, there's no question why Fishbowl Radio Network is #1 in the business. With everything going on in the community, people are constantly looking for new info and entertainment. Now you can be that voice to bring what they need. Stop talking about what you want to do and bring it on air. Call Fishbowl Radio Network at 817-633-4880. That's 817-633-4880 and jump in.
Hello, I'm Bill. I've been in the financial industry for over 30 years. Now I share my passion for helping others become more financially educated. Why are so many people interested in what I share? Because like others, I've discovered who the financially free are and who they are not. But most importantly, I've determined how ordinary people can become financially free.
I'm in Beverly Hills right now. I'm
getting a paycheck, drowning in
search for shopping at the store I work for, and just being black.
This is the VP of Versace Footwear, Salehi Bembury.
What you're doing is you're making it completely different.
Yeah, I mean, guys.
You're making it completely
so
different.
So you checked my ID. What's going on? Do I have anything on my record?
You're good to go.
I'm good to go. That's what I thought.
Who was racially profiled in Beverly Hills, California.
I've just been GPSing trying to figure out where I'm going.
Okay, do you have any ID on you by chance, man? Without reaching into your pockets, you don't have any weapons or anything, right?
I don't. I'm like super nervous.
After being stopped for jaywalking, this happens.
I'm just gonna check to make sure you don't have any weapons if you don't mind, okay? Face that way real quick. Put your hands behind your back, palms together like you're praying. Awesome, thank you. Spread your feet. Cool, man. Don't wanna mess up those shoes, those are pretty nice. You said I can search you, right?
You do whatever.
Cool, man.
This is embarrassing.
Well, what we like to do, like when we stop someone, we just, to make sure you don't have any weapons or anything, we just like to...
feels a little excessive. What's unfortunate is like I literally designed the shoes that are in this bag and I'm being like searched for. Really? Yeah, I do.
That's why I'm not, that's why, like I said, man, you're not in handcuffs or anything, I'm just talking to you right now, okay?
I do, and I'm just walking down the street, that's a little ridiculous.
After being startled and harassed, Salehi calls out the officers.
How do you say your first name, sir? Salehi. Just gonna run him real quick, partner, make sure everything checks out.
I have to record this because I just don't feel comfortable with that.
Well, just because right now you are being detained, just because we're talking to you, and we don't know, not saying that you would do this, but people have called and they have friends come and then it becomes an officer safety
I'm literally
issue.
just gonna record right now. That's all I'm doing. You see it's recording and that's all I'm doing because I feel, you hear it in my voice, I'm uncomfortable, I'm nervous.
Do y'all hear the pain and agony this man is going through?
Do you understand the climate that we're in?
No, I understand. Is there anything I can do to make you feel more comfortable?
Not
You're
really,
not in handcuffs or anything,
not
right?
really. Like your boys are pulling up, I'm uncomfortable. I'm not making any like fast movements, but this is uncomfortable for me. Huh?
Are we making any comments?
No, but this is uncomfortable for me. I just want to get to my car, so I'm just going to hit record for you.
Yeah, hey, whatever you want to do, sir. But like I said, you understand why we stopped you, correct? And you admitted to jaywalking?
So I'm in Beverly Hills right now.
None of this had to transpire, and the cops know it.
So you can't jaywalk, correct? You
understood, yeah. Can I have my stuff back, please?
But you see how you just switched that complete narrative?
Nah.
You were talking to us saying,
I know how you guys saw it. Am I good to go?
Yeah, you're good.
All right, you guys have a good day.
Next time, don't change the narrative like that, though.
Finally, after being detained, Salehi averts the crisis. Donatella Versace, the sister of Gianni, the founder of the world-renowned company, reposted the video to her 5.4 million followers on Instagram, writing she is appalled at what occurred and that the officer's behavior is completely unacceptable, and Salehi was stopped simply for being black. It's clear. Salehi says in a video once in his car, he was visiting a friend's store. When he left the Versace store, his employer, the police officers quickly got out of the car to question him. Bembury's caption is simple and to the point in his original upload. Being black in Beverly Hills is not just a one-off with Salehi. Per ABC.com, in Beverly Hills, black people were almost 21 times more likely to get arrested than white people. Meanwhile, in Southern California, African Americans comprised about 7% of the population, but made up 17% of arrests in 2018. Just this month, Ashley Blackman sued the city of Beverly Hills, its police department, and several individual officers, alleging she was stopped because of her race while driving through the city, then ordered out of her car at gunpoint. The LA Times has more. In LA, black residents who represent less than 10% of the city's population and about 38% of its homeless population were 3.8 times more likely than white residents to be cited for a non-traffic infraction, receiving 30% of all citations issued by the Los Angeles Police Department between 2017 and 2019. Black people received 63% of citations issued by the LAPD for loitering while standing, 33% of citations for loitering while sitting or sleeping, 27% of citations for drinking or being intoxicated in public, 32% of citations for having an open bottle, and 29% of citations for refusing to take down a tent, the study found.
If you'd like to hear more thought-provoking content like TYT Sports on Facebook and to help in my journey to keep media independent, go to TYT.
Moronic behavior and legislation of the GOP. And right before the break, we were talking about why do they work so hard to breathe life into past Jim Crow laws. And Jim Crow laws were the laws of the South that affected black people, comings, goings, workings, drinking out of water fountains. You know, you drink out of the dirty, nasty water fountain, and we'll drink out of the clean, pristine one, and you better not drink out of the pristine one because Jim Crow says no. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit because there's a lot going on in the world that affects us because we are not only multifaceted and monolithic, we are three-dimensional in every single way. And we're so three-dimensional that everything sparks a question in my mind. So right now in Jerusalem, they have, it ain't no peace in the Middle East. And there are rockets. Thursday, there were rocket attacks on Israeli cities from in the Gaza Strip for the fourth day, where the Palestinians are firing rockets at Israel and Israelis are firing, they're firing rockets at one another. I don't even know to what end, because they've been fighting for a mighty long time. Well, I'm sure I'm the only person around my age that really remembers this, that when Carter brokered a deal at Camp David between the two leaders and the two leaders, the Arab nations, which would consist of like Egypt and Syria and Israel. And here's the interesting thing for those of you that enjoy Bible study, if you will. What's really interesting about that to me is you learned about the Canaanites, okay? And you learned about the Canaanites in Bible school or Sunday school or BTU if you Baptist Training Union, shout out, I'm going back. This is the things that you learned. And they talked about how the ancient Israelites drove out the Canaanites who were actually living in the land that flowed with milk and honey. Y'all remember that? For those of you that are Bible people, I know everybody that listens to my show is a Bible person. But I'm just, just follow along for the heck of it. You here, might as well listen. So it's ironic to me that DNA tests were performed on people as of late, and you can verify me through the National Geographic, and it says that in several other places, right? And really what they said was Syria, Egypt, those that are Palestine, the Palestinians, as well as Israeli Jews, were all ancient Canaanites. You understand what I'm saying? They're all considered ancient, what was Canaanites, when the ancient Israelites drove them out. So who were the ancient Israelites? We'll come back to that, because right now we need to catch up. So, we've got this fighting I believe on Thursday, the death toll was around 83, 85 Gaza residents, 17 children, and that was according to the Palestinian health officials. On the Israeli side, at least 6 people, including 1 teenager, were dead. And I said, well, what does it have to do with us, Corey? Well, I'm glad you asked. What I think is so ironic is that there's always been a fine line about saying who actually is supposed to inhabit that land. Again, that's a biblical thing about if you're a Christian, you believe that Jesus is not going to return until the true inhabitants occupy the land. That's the land they're fighting over. Because the Israeli and the Palestinians are really fighting. Muslims and Jews are fighting over who should get land that they consider the Holy Land. And you've had people build mosques. If you look at the TV and you see the mosque with the big gold dome, but then you have the Jews that go to the Wailing Wall. It becomes very, very political. And it's hard to keep track of, right? Because you have Netanyahu, who is the president, who is a crook, by the way. I feel like I'd be remiss if I did not talk about this. He's a crook. And pre-COVID, there were indictments coming down for him for extortion, perjury, embezzlement. There were several things. I mean, there was. I'm just listing the 3 that I can think of off the top of my head. It was a host of things that they were going to. Now, I'm not saying that he had been convicted. These are alleged crimes. So I should say, you know what? Let me crawfish that back. He's an alleged crook. Because we want to be politically correct and we want to be fair while we sip, right? So he's an alleged crook. But they've been talking about the way he has handled things for years. Well, here's what's interesting. Because America will paint a picture that all the Jews live in Israel and the Arabs live outside of Israel, of the nation state of Israel. And that Egyptians and Syrians and Palestinians and those that are considered the Middle East, and I'm not sure why it's the Middle East, because it's in Africa, so it's like middle of what? Because before they started drawing their really fancy maps, it was considered to be Euro-Asia, but before that, it was Africa, Asia, all of that, and then Europe came along, carved their piece out, and took some chunks of land, and so I'm not sure why it's considered the Middle East, but I've digressed. It's in Africa. Anyway, I guess you don't want to be African, so you say you're something else. Anyway, so they have that, and so let me also point this out. If you have a parent or grandparent that is Jewish, documented Jewish, born in the nation state of Israel, you can claim citizenship. At one time, we had a lot of pedophiles leaving the United States and going home to Israel and basically seeking asylum. And it's a huge production to get these pedophiles to justice because they go and hide out in Israel. And so Israel has started to work with groups in the United States, because it's certainly not the United States government that brings them to justice. These certain groups that go and get them. But you can claim citizenship. Now, there are other places that you can go and live and claim citizenship, but Israel's not one of them. I mean, well, to be fair, you can't go to Nigeria either, even though y'all are taking all those tests and it says, you're like 57% Nigeria. Nigeria is like, that's okay. You might have, you may be able to go to Ghana. The Ghanese government will allow you to work for 5 years to establish yourself and be of good standing. And then you can petition for land so that you can own your own stuff. But then you have to work another 5 years. So it's 10 years before you're considered. And then that land has to be granted to you by a Ghanese chieftain, if you will, because they own all of their land. Okay, so just to give you an idea of that Israel's not the only place that works like this. But here's how it affects you. If you were to get one of those 23andMe tests and it said that you were, let's say 47% Ethiopian, isn't it ironic that nobody's test ever says that? None of you all are ever from Ethiopia. Then you would probably fail, but you would have a better argument than I would to be able to claim citizenship in Israel. Because, again, the Bible, I guess it's just a Bible government show today. Because King David married the Queen of Sheba and they had offspring, which later begat David. Those of you who know what I'm talking about know what I'm talking about. The lineage of David. Because of that, you can claim Jewish citizenship if you are Ethiopian, if you're of Ethiopian descent, because they recognize that King David married the Queen of Sheba and had children, and so they will be recognized. Now in Africa, the Igbo tribe, and Igbo is spelled I-B-O because y'all always want to fact check me, and that's fine. It's great. Good head. The Igbo tribe says that they are the descendants of the Jews that were led out of Egypt by Moses, and they still conduct the same Hebrew rituals and customs of ancient times. Now, because you have Canaanites that are Jewish, Canaanites that are Egyptian, Canaanites that are Syrian, Canaanites that are Palestinian, all living and fighting over there, the idea is we don't know who the heck the true inhabitants of the land are. I have my ideas, Igbo, but never mind, because that's not what we're talking about. And so they're fighting themselves. They're ancestrally, they're probably the same folk, and they're fighting. It's just a mess, right? So the conflict timeline, because we always hear about Israel and Palestinian conflict, but it's hard to make sense of. Brian Murphy did a very good job of the Washington Post of doing a timeline that I just kind of want to briefly run through because it brings us up to date. And we're always, as the United States, policing the world. Yet we can't even treat our own Black Americans right. We're always telling people what to do. But I think what is even more interesting is that the Jews will come, Israelis, will come to the United States and say, look, have compassion for us. Look at how these Palestinians are treating us. These Canaanites that were driven out. Look how they're treating us. And then we say, oh, woo, woo, woo. Woo, 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 woo. We're careful not to say, okay, you need to build your embassy in this place and claim it as your own. We're careful to do that, but we always say we are a friend to Israel. And then we go and we make deals, oil deals, with the people that are living in the Middle East. That's really Africa. It's Middle from what? We don't know. But they go and make deals with them. And so then we have to have a little conversation, a little smooching with them because we need to buy their oil. So we say, we're with Israel, but you know, we good too over here because we need your oil, and oil is, OPEC gets the oil, and, So we have to be friends. So we walk a very fine line. And so every time there's this huge conflict, we're weighing in. But here's the thing. It's about racism and discrimination. And that is what we're trying to, and ethnic cleansing. And that is why we get involved. Because we in America, we totally understand racism and discrimination and ethnic cleansing better than almost anybody. So why wouldn't we weigh in except for the ones that we are the greatest committers, I'm using this word, I'm making a word, committers of these atrocities. But we always weighing in, right? So let's talk a little bit about what the heck happened and why they're fighting. Because I think it's interesting for us to talk about why they're fighting, to understand why we shouldn't even fix our mouth to tell anybody anything about anything that has to do with anything with racism, discrimination, and ethnic cleansing. So the roots of the conflict and mistrust, it's deep, it's complex, and it's really about the land. And it has a biblical basis. So for the past 70 years, people have witnessed this uprising, this constant fighting, and I'm not talking about fighting like, you standing on one side and somebody else standing on the other. It would be very different if it was like Canada. Like they talked about when people had, with the coronavirus, and you had people that were living, like in Michigan, and their family member lived right across the way in Canada. And so, you get mad and you throw rocks at each other across. It's not that kind of fighting. Like they throw bombs. And, many years ago, it was the Soviet Union, that's now Russia, and the United States that were weighing in. Because here's the other thing. When Israel needed help to fight the Palestinians, we supplied the guns and the ammo to Israel. Right? But we always want to broker a deal for peace. Us, peace. So let's do this. Let's talk about, very briefly, why they're having a fight, because I think it's hilarious that we're weighing in on their fights. So, 1948, right? That's when it kind of just all goes haywire. 1967, they have the 6-Day War, and it begins with Israeli warplanes striking Egyptian airfields, and the Israeli ground forces enter the Sinai Peninsula, which is considered part of Egypt's land. So it was kind of like when Trump allowed Russia to invade. Oh, I can't think of the name of the small country now, and I hate when I do that. That's, I think I have mommy brain fog. No. Angela was trying to help me. When we invaded, it's a little small town, and remember Trump was holding the man hostage and wasn't going to give him any money because he was trying to broker his own side, hustle, I'm going to break your kneecaps kind of deal. It's that same kind of thing. We choose sides, but not for real. So war breaks out, and it's conflict for years with Egypt. So I don't want you to think that when we talk about the Palestinian-Israeli war, we're talking about that entire area. We're really talking about them fight. It's really about what people consider Arabs and Jews having, a major fist fight with weapons of mass destruction. So Jordan joins the fight alongside Egypt. And the Israeli forces get the upper hand, and the Israeli takes the Gaza Strip. Sinai Peninsula, West Bank, Golan Heights, which is considered predominantly Arab East Jerusalem. So they're having a fight about the land. Remember, I told you that. And hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have to flee because now the Jews are in control. October of 1973, a coalition of Arab nations led by Egypt, Syria, they launched a surprise attack on Israel. And the Arab forces initially gained ground, but then they're eventually, driven off by an Israeli counteroffensive attack because we are supplying Israel with weapons and ammunition. Okay, so understand that the Arab nations are pushing Israel back, and then we get involved on Israel's side. You do realize that the reason we get involved on Israel's side is not because we believe in their politics. It's because we want to be on the side of right as a Christian nation, just in case they are the true inhabitants of the land. When Jesus comes, we don't want to be over there with the Arabs. I mean, I'm breaking it down very simplistically, but that's basically the case. In 1978, there's a peace deal between the Egyptian president, Anwar Sadat, and Israeli Prime Minister McKinney. at Camp David with Jimmy Carter, September of 1978. Our president, Jimmy Carter, that builds those houses for people, Habitat for Humanity, him, the peanut farmer. And, there's supposed to be this deal between the Palestinians. It's supposed to be peace forever, but it never happens. December 1978, the Palestinian uprising, and it brings clashes and, it's protests all over the West Bank and Gaza and Israel, and unrest continues for years. You have families that can't see each other. They can't really be seen with one another for fear of retaliation. And there, many, many people are killed, injured on both sides. Then, that's in 1987. I said September 1978, December 1987. Then we get to 93. And in 93, we have two pacts known as the Oslo Accords. It's signed between Israel and the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and it sets out this whole peace process and what they're going to do, and the United Nations is involved, right? And then there's a follow-up to it in 1995. And the agreements between the Palestinian Authority to oversee in most administrative affairs in the West Bank and Gaza. And it's recognized by Israel and the United States as a negotiating partner. Israel and the United States. Okay, and then they leave all this stuff unresolved. Key issues like Israeli settlements in the West Bank and the status of Jerusalem, because Jerusalem wants to be, they want Jerusalem to be able to claim a place of land, put their embassy, and say, this is our land. And so the Palestinians consider that as the capital of any future state. So the land is what's in dispute. In 2000, they come up with another agreement, and the Palestinians have an uprising, and discussions for another agreement. The Palestinians have an uprising, and it begins riots, and it breaks out, and it's chaos, like what you see now, but it's chaos. It's 2000 chaos, not 2021 chaos. And it's, right-wing Israeli groups start to take over, and it becomes a complete and a mess is what it becomes. So Ariel Sharon is later the prime minister of Israel. And he's moved to a compound because they're afraid they're going to get him. And this compound is venerated with Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Now, you do know that in the Arab nations, Christianity is, people that are Christians are oftentimes brutalized. So that's kind of why we're not on their side, because supposedly, even in Israel, the Jews, it's their country, right? So Jewish faith is the predominant faith, but they do not mistreat supposedly they don't mistreat the people who practice Islam, and Christianity is accepted where it's not accepted in the Arab nation. So that's another reason why we kind of choose sides, right? But the truth is, we just want to be on the side of right, because we don't never know what right is. So, and they fight from 2000 to 2005, and it's violence and it's chaos, and hundreds of people die on both sides. In 2006, the Palestinian militant group Hamas. Now, I know y'all have heard Hamas. Hamas wins the elections in Gaza, leading to political strains that are more moderate, with the Fatah party controlling the West Bank. Gaza, the West Bank. Some of y'all are sitting here wondering what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the West Bank in New Orleans. I'm literally talking about, okay, y'all with me? All right. So in December 2008, Israel begins this 3 weeks of attacks on Gaza after, a barrage of rockets into Israel by Palestinian militants who are supposedly led by tunnels from Egypt. And more than, over 1,100 Palestinians and at least 13 Israelites are killed. So that brings us to today. So you say, well, okay, all that happened, but why are they fighting now? Well, they're fighting now because what happens is over time, somebody somewhere just gets pissed off, and then when we get it on this side, all we know is they're fighting again. So where we are now is they've been shooting and firing rockets at one another for the past 5 or 6 days, and there's an escalation that is continuing to build. On Monday morning of last week, hundreds of Palestinians were injured because they are having Ramadan now. So they launched an attack. The Israelis launched an attack on them during the Muslim Holy Week, which is Ramadan. And, well, it's not a week, it's a month, but while they were at their mosque. And so that is considered like the holiest of holy sites in Islam. And so now we are starting to talk about how we can get involved and help because we want peace in the Middle East. Now, I told you all of that because I think it is of critical importance for us to talk about and examine the fact that they want to do all of this peace and intervene and help when the truth of the matter is they can't help themselves because we are over here getting slaughtered by police. People are holding us down till the police comes. We got people shooting us up and killing us. And, we don't have any real legislation to do that. There's no federal Botham Jean law that encompasses, or any law, I should say, that really encompasses everything. So now we're talking about George Floyd legislation to stop chokehold, but it should have been stopped after Eric Garner. Do you understand what I'm saying? The United States government is constantly getting involved in other people's stuff when if there was never a testament for physician heal thyself, it's now. I'm not saying that maybe we can't do some good work. I mean, we haven't been able to get peace in the Middle East, but I guess we just keep on giving it the old college try. But I also don't understand why we continue to be involved in things and settling other people's disputes when we cannot fix our own stuff. And why are we invited in? So that's the critical question to me. Why are we allowed to come in? Why is anybody listening to us? Because I think it should be very much like the Chinese told William Barr. You can't, or like they told Kerry when he held the position for Secretary of State. You can't fix your own stuff. You commit atrocities against black people. You can't come over here and tell me about how to treat my people. Basically that's what the Chinese government told them. I'm paraphrasing, but that happened. So and I'm just confused as to why we keep getting invited in. Hit me up and let me know what you think. Subscribe, like the show if you're feeling today, comment. But I really want to know your thoughts. Why do they keep letting America in when America can't fix their own stuff? This is Corey with the Black Tea Sip. We're going to take a quick break. I'll be right back.
For nearly 30 years, we've had the experienced leadership of Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson. Now, it's our duty to ensure that we continue toward progress. I am Jane Hope Hamilton. As a wife, a mother, and for a time a single mother, I know firsthand the challenges that our families face, and I know what it takes to get things done for our families and our community. As the state director for President Biden and former chief of staff on Capitol Hill, I fought for our community to have affordable health care, good paying jobs, and quality education. For years, I have also gone toe-to-toe with those who try to push us back and knock us down. When corrupt Republicans pass discriminatory voting laws that violate our rights, I fought back, went to court, and won. And when an out-of-control cop beat me to the ground, I refused to be intimidated. I stood up for myself, and the charges were dropped because I demanded justice. In this climate, as we face so much uncertainty, I am being encouraged to run in Congressional District 30. And as I consider it, I'd like to hear from you. Together, we can move our communities and our families forward.
He didn't like me from day one. I communicated the issues. There was a man who touched me inappropriately. I tried to go somewhere else, and they told me, oh, well, I need to talk to Don because that's the name of the operator here. He just tried to fire me for calmly vocalizing how I felt. He is married to his wife here as well. They both have made it very clear they don't like me. And when I told him I wanted to talk to him, he's like, yeah, before it's too late. And in the middle of me talking, he said, are you done? Because you have done nothing but criticize. How long have you worked for Chick-fil-A? You're bringing down the employees who have been here for 20 years. You've done nothing but walk in here with an attitude. And I said, I think the problem is because I'm a black woman and I vocalize my issues. So if anybody thinks Chick-fil-A is the best company, I just say do not work at this one.
Joining us, we're not playing music because Facebook continues to attack me for playing music on a radio show. So we've been playing clips, and the clip you just saw was of a young woman in McKinney, Texas, very, very upset. And she's saying that she was touched inappropriately and she tried to vocalize. So now she's being sexually harassed on her job. Unwanted sexual touching is sexual assault. She vocalizes it, you know, and I'm sure it's difficult to get to like an HR person at Chick-fil-A. And you know what? I was going to buy Chick-fil-A for the kids today, but no, not going to do it. And Chick-fil-A has been really, really vocal about how they feel about things. Gays and lesbians and, of course, transgenders and LGBTQ plus have all experienced discrimination through Chick-fil-A, which is supposed to be a Christian organization. That's why they're closed on Sunday. And I think it's interesting that this young woman takes to Twitter. I understand Twitter has been tearing their reviews up because, you know, Black Twitter don't play no games. But I think it's interesting that after she posted that and said that these things happen, I just got it today, but I posted it because it wasn't one of those things where I felt the need to say, oh, well, let me see if this really happened. I felt like that was her truth. And I felt like in her truth, she was discussing how she had been treated. And in that moment, her emotional plea, because she was so hurt by what happened. Can you bring up the graphic? I want people to see this while I read it. Right after her video, someone posted and said, asked for extra sauce and an employee, I believe by the name of Don, Millie, because I think his last name is Millie, M-I-L-L-I-E. Millie rocked to my car and said, I thought you nappy-headed gorillas already had the sauce. He proceeded to spit in my drink. Then Millie rocked backward, screaming monkey noises at me. Very traumatic. Would not recommend. Now, I don't think this actually happened, but this is the kind of thing that Don, Millie, and his wife are experiencing from Black Twitter. Now, eventually they'll shut it down. They'll say, oh, this is not real, and, you know, you can't just say those things, but the damage will have been done. Because this is the only way that we as Black people know to be able to take things and control them in a way where we can feel some sort of satisfaction. So this show today has been talking about the oxymoronic way in which we are being governed, not just from the top with the federal government, but even the state government in Texas, the government in Montana and Wyoming and other states. I believe it's Kansas wants to stop the $300 a month extra unemployment insurance benefit that you get from Congress for because of a worldwide pandemic. And so these are the kind of things that are happening. And our response to those things is to take to social media and we've gotten people fired. I'm saying we because, you know, I'm part of Black Twitter. We've gotten people fired and we've had companies come out and denounce behavior and people. But this is our only avenue. And the Republican Party, and I started this show talking about how crazy the Republican Party is because they have ousted Liz Cheney. They ousted Liz Cheney not because she did a bad job, not because they differed in legislative philosophies, but because she is saying that Donald Trump needs to stop. He has hijacked and trumped the Republican Party. And their belief is that the the election was hijacked and stolen, and that Joe Biden is basically ran a coup and did not allow Trump to remain president through, hook booging the election. And Liz Cheney was like, there's no hook booging. She's saying, no, that's not true. And she's not going to say. You got another one in the Senate, Klinger, young guy, who says it may not be politically expedient, but I'm not about to start touting this Republican nonsense. And it really is nonsensical. It's oxymoronic, because it's just not true. And so they voted and ousted Liz Cheney and put this Elise Stefanik in her place. Now, there are some Republicans, I love this about the Republican Party, they are so disjointed, but they will walk that party line. Some Republicans did not want her as a leader, third highest leader in the conference, because they said that the Elise Stefanik, who is an avid Trump supporter, I'm talking about lick a mile of his poop, she's too liberal. Well, now how is an avid Trump supporter too liberal? This is what I'm saying. These people are oxymoronic. But it's an interesting following of what is happening. And this cancel culture has literally reached into the hallowed bowels, and I'm using that as an oxymoron, the hallowed bowels of, because I think it's only fitting when we're talking about the Republican Party. And I'm saying bowels because they're all pooping everywhere. It's like they just have diarrhea of the mouth. How did it reach our government? How did it get there, and how did it stay? And how does Trump have this grip? And I knew when he left, he wasn't really going away, but I really did not know that that he would still have this kind of impact. And he really believes he's coming back. I talked before about how Arizona is recounting votes. And if you're not up on that, I really want you to take the time and just do a quick little Google, because I think it'll blow your mind, the things that are going on. All right, before we get out of here, Porsha. Can we bring up the graphic of Porsha and the one with her and the two guys, please? Because I want everybody to see. So here, look, this is what happened. Now, I'm not really a Real Housewives watcher, but my Shine, he kind of watches it, and he finds it to be a complete train wreck that he cannot look away. And so he was like, and I think he follows it because, well, he never sees the episode. He's always several episodes behind. But he'll kind of watch an episode when Black Twitter is all of us because, we kind of nosy. And so he told me, oh, you got to see this episode. So I'm a little bit up on it, more than I ever would have been before. Because I stopped watching it before Nene, I think, became the executive producer of the show. And I mean, just shout out to acting a fool and getting paid. So Porsha, who was with Cordell Stewart, the gay football player, then moves on and gets her own voice, and people start paying her attention, and she starts making some money off the show. And they do make, I think, when you get a peach, because Marlo, did she just get a peach? But, once you get the peach and you're on the show holding a peach, well, then I think you make $500,000 a year. And I think at one time they were really upset because Nene was making $1 million. She's making more than they were, but she was also executive producer. People need to really understand how money works. Anyway, rank has its privileges, titles pay. So with that, Porsha is now with this girl Fallon, who was supposed to be her friend. And so Porsha came all out and she said, well, we're not really friends. She was kind of like, there's just a chick I know. I can't, duck and dodge everybody who was married to somebody in Atlanta. I'd be by myself. And so you see her there, and supposedly Porsha is pregnant by this guy who's older that used to be married to Fallon. Now the ink on the divorce is not dry because Fallon is Well, they're still finalizing everything, and this guy is worth $40 million. Now, somebody said he was a Nigerian scammer. I don't know about that. I'm just throwing this out here. It's all rumor and innuendo because it's reality fake television. So I'm not going to say alleged. I'm just going to say it because that's what the rumor is. I mean, you could go to the shade room. They'll tell you the same thing. So now you have Porsha looking kind of preggy in this photo. She looked kind of preggers. I'm like, Porsha, who did you, I mean, are you just laying down and getting up and letting them squirt? Or, I mean, are some people in between that you did have wrap up? Because it seems like every time she get involved with somebody, very quickly she gets knocked up. That's a health hazard. Somebody need to get her to Dr. Jackie. Do they not they don't cross-pollinate their shows? Because, what's that show? It's like Station 13 and Grey's Anatomy. They always cross-pollinating on each other's shows. They don't do that for reality. But somebody need to call Dr. Jackie. She is in Atlanta. Or one of those doctors, not the dentist, not her, whatever her name is, Heavenly or whatever. Don't call the dentist, but call one of these OBGYNs and get Porsha like some literature. Because I don't understand this. You've been with somebody a month and you're pregnant. Unless it's all a hoax. Let's go pull up the picture with the two men and Porsha because she's supposedly with her, this is her child's father that she was engaged to that she didn't marry, that was buying her Chanel bag every day trying to get back with her, let her tell it. And who has time to buy a Chanel bag every day? I mean, and they're not special ordering the bags. So like they're supposed to have a lot of money, so are they just buying shelf Chanel bags, like shelf bags? They just, I don't know. That doesn't make sense to me. But, my dad said if it doesn't make sense, then it's, He told me his exact words were, if you understand there's something wrong with you. That's what he said. So nothing wrong with me. So I'm assuming that this idea that they are co-parenting effectively and the two men, even though the first baby daddy wanted to get back with her, has accepted this second baby dad. Maybe it's one of those social media things where the side piece is paying for the bills and everything for the woman, so the other man doesn't get upset because the side piece man is a benefit. So maybe that's one of those kind of situations where he's actually benefiting. Maybe he don't have to pay child support anymore because, he worth $40 million. He just done stepped up, to help his soon-to-be baby mama with her first. I don't know, but child, if this ain't ghetto and convoluted, I shut my mouth wide open. So now you have Porsha. Fallon wasn't really her friend. The two daddies are getting along famously. They are hopelessly in love. The ink on the divorce is not dry, but as far as Porsha and her two men, they're one big happy family. We're supposed to believe that. And I almost fell for it because I let y'all pull me in because like people were calling me and everything. And I almost fell for it. But here's the deal. I told y'all $500,000 a year for a season. None of them were ever going to see that kind of money before. So let me say something. My dearly departed childhood best friend, Charlotte Thompson, Shaw. This is the kind of scam me and Charlotte would have run. One of us would have been on the reality show. So let me just say it was me. Okay? And I've been like, girl, look, I got to keep up appearances and I got to keep some mess going on to stay on this show because you know how Andy loves mess. So what we going to do is I'm going to act like, your dude and I got together, and then that'll give you a storyline because you just going to be crying in your soup because I done stole your man and I was supposed to be your friend. It's like a whole song and stuff. It's a whole Mary J. Blige, Whitney Houston song. And now what we doing, girl, is we getting you a storyline, building off of my storyline. We'll get some money in your pocket because you and him breaking up anyway, and then we'll cut him in on a little change, and that's how we going to run this thing because at least it'll keep another $500,000 in my pocket for the next season. See how that works? Because Charlotte would have said yeah. And if she had come to me, I'd be like, girl, yeah. Because at that point, we talking about $500,000. I'm much older now, certainly not selling my soul. But in my 20s, I know Portia's older than that. But in my 20s, me and Charlotte would have rocked a scheme like that and wouldn't have thought nothing about it. Now, these are some old haggard gardening tools. But they trying to keep their money, and really and truly, I don't knock the hustle. But I'm telling y'all to stop falling for the banana in the tailpipe, because this is all this is. Y'all remember when y'all came out with that lemonade with Beyonce? And y'all were talking about, oh, she just poured her soul out. Oh, my God, I just felt. Now, don't misunderstand me. I wasn't even really a big Beyonce fan. I respected what she had been able to accomplish, but I certainly was not a fan. But the Lemonade album was the truth. And we were all reveling in her pain. And, well, I was kind of fast-forwarding through some of them songs because they were just too sad. But, you know, it was a good album, a great album. And then Jay-Z dropped 444. And then he said some things. I mean, he had already said, you don't get a dude back like that. He didn't say dude. He said ninja, but I'm not saying that. And he said, you don't get him back like that. I was going to get right back. Like, he had already had that kind of song. But then he came out with 444. And y'all was like, oh, my God. And he, you know, because he mixed in a few songs about, baby, I'm sorry. Baby, baby, please. It was kind of a Key Sweat thing, but not for real. So y'all bought into it, hook, line, and sinker. And we were all buying the album. Well, I didn't buy them. I just have Tidal. I just give him $10 a month and me and my kids listen. So I just could get the album first. But we all bought into it. This is all this is with Porsha and Fallon and that dude. I mean, she got a type. They both funny looking with round heads. I don't like men with very round heads. It's like you could take their head out and play basketball with it. Just go right into the net. I don't like that. It's creepy. It grosses me out. But anyway, that's what she likes. She also doesn't like very attractive men. But I've digressed. So to each his own. Now Porsha's a political activist, social justice activist. She's been arrested. She keep getting knocked up. She just be with them just a short period of time. She's a woman that knows what she wants and goes after it and doesn't have to think about it very much. And, you know, that's where we are with Porsha and the Real Housewives. This foolishness. I mean, y'all watch it for entertainment, but it is certainly not real life. I mean, you know, y'all helping them get these Chanel bags every day. Y'all are participatory. Power to the people. This is Coy with the Black Tea Sip. We'll do it again next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Love, peace, and hair grease.